Welcome back to Be Lifted Up, your guide to living an abundant life. We're here with Jeff Carter, head of the Bergen County, New Jersey NAACP. Jeff has already, laid out some very important points, even with the opening segment. Jeff, talk to us about the work that you're doing right now when we're talking about voting rights and just the needs that you're looking to meet through your organization and through your tradition as a second generation, it sounds like maybe third generation civil rights leader.
Well, I think you hit on a good point. Everything is interconnected. I look at it like a chain there. You have housing, we have education, we have government, and a lot of times we elect people who don't stand for us. We go to the polls, and what we're trying to do, and we did a few years ago and are replicating now, is we at first would go out and we do voter registration. We pat ourselves on the back. We say, oh, we've done voter registration. But the biggest thing is, in our schools, civics is not taught anymore. What is civics? What is the difference between your local school board and your city council, your county government officials, your assembly? In New Jersey, they have assemblymen and state senators. They have legislative districts. Most people don't know what legislative district they're in. And on the county level, okay, they used to call them freeholders here, which was basically a slave term, and they changed it to county commissioners a year ago, but they don't know what they do. And a lot of people will come to us and say, oh, I'm going to call our senator for this, whether state or U.S. senator, but that's not where they need to be. And one of the things I go around and tell people here in Jersey is that we have a lot of small towns, and your school budget is bigger than your town budget. And a lot of people will say, well, I don't have any kids in the school district anymore, so I don't have to worry about it. Yes, you do have to worry about it, because they're spending your tax dollars. And if your children, and when I say your children, they're all our children in the town, whether we've birthed them or whether we know them or not, because our quality of life is based on how well they're educated. And we have seemed to let that go. In the old days, if we walked down the street and Mrs. Jones saw you do something and they called your mama guilty as charged, and you had to deal with the consequences. Now people are afraid to say anything. They don't want to say anything. That's not my problem. And again, that's that chain link fence where we're all interconnected, at the fence, at the boot, arm to arm. And until we get back to that, helping each other, caring each other for each other, loving each other, and what we see now in the mental health issues, which are causing more of the shootings, is we don't love each other enough. We don't respect each other. We see it in the halls of Congress. If I'm not, if I don't believe in the same thing as you, we can't be in the same room. We can't talk together. We can't even be in the same, city. And that's just foolishness, because, God taught us to love our neighbor as ourselves, and we don't seem to do that. We keep moving away from that. And until we get back to faith and loving each other, we're always going to have a lot of problems.
Jeff and Dee, that foundation of loving our neighbors as ourselves, and that not being just words and feelings, but actions, it really underscores for me why this kind of engagement, this conversation among people of faith about our roles in this process is so important. And so, Dee, what I'm hearing is also, Jeff, and both of you, I definitely want to hear your thoughts, is that it's not just about voting registration, it's about civic education. And until you just said it, it just dawned on me, like, yeah, I had social studies in school, I had history, I knew the difference between my congressman and my senator and a local representative and the state representative. And just with a high school diploma, I had a basic understanding of government. And Dee, I don't, that's why I'm fascinated with what Melanie does. I'm a fan of Melanie's, and this, because it does say civic engagement.
Yep.
But I think Jeff makes an excellent point about we don't know what that means anymore.
he hit Jeff. Thank you for amplifying. That's the miss. In fact, I will tell you, I won't say I wasn't ashamed, but I'm just like, how could we be successful, educated, um, folks of a certain age and not have an understanding of how the laws are made and passed and sponsored and such. And I only a few years ago, I'm going to be quite honest, really begin to understand it at at another level. And so I think that's a big miss. And I think that's why it's so disconnected in terms of us and our culture and our understanding about the responsibility to support. And to Jeff, to your point about, if I live in a particular town, if I live in Bergen, or in your neighborhood, but I don't have kids, I'm already disconnected, that I don't need to worry about that. The gap is because I'm uneducated in that area in terms of all of how all of the things work together. So yeah. And I had this experience. Well, you know what? Let me pause there. So Jeff, I just wanted to say, thank you for raising that up. But how do we fix that? How do we? I mean, I don't even understand how we fix that now when they're having a whole nother conversation about, what our kids are taught in school. How do you address this?
Well, one of the things I said was self-help, and we've got away from it. And I'm, uh, growing up in a cradle Episcopalian because of my father, we've gotten away from the things that we need to do in the church. And when school doesn't do it, and let's call it out and say what it is, we want to, shy away from things. But I, like to hit the nail right on the head with the hammer. And what happens is that if the school didn't teach it, and we know now, we have in Jersey an Amistad law, which is talking about Black history, and it was passed 20 years ago, and it has no teeth and that. But if the school isn't doing it, then our churches, our fraternal organizations, our links, mocha moms, any organization need to be working with our children. And it's a shame because a lot of adults don't know either, and that is a huge problem. I was blessed and lucky and went for all the wrong reasons. When I was in high school, they had what they called at the YMCA a youth in government. So we went down. I grew up in Pittsburgh. We took over the whole in Harrisburg, the whole state government, for a weekend, and passed bills. And they had governor, lieutenant governor, and all the offices. And so we learned about that in high school. And we need to train our kids what we've started doing, not with civics, but as the pre-pandemic, a lot of our kids still don't know how and what their legal rights are with the law. So when Martin Luther King weekend a few years ago, we showed the movie 13th by Ava DuVernay. We had a former judge in Teaneck and an attorney there. And so after the movie, they asked them questions. And it was amazing how the children were soaking up information and were thirsty and hungry for information. Well, why can't it be this way? Well, why can't I talk and say, because if it's truthful, don't argue with the policeman. And it was a powerful thing. Unfortunately, the next year it was shut down because of the pandemic. But we thought we were going to have a few kids. We had almost 100 people there, and we have to keep doing things of that nature to engage our youth, and there were adults there too, so they learned. We have to keep engaging, and the old saying is each one teach one. And so we need to do that in our churches, in our organizations. And if we all had small groups and worked on that, it would be much better. But getting back to the voting, we are gonna work very hard, because we understand that, and we are nonpartisan with the NAACP. So let me say that right off the boot. But we know that when the party that is in power in midterm elections usually has a bloodbath. So we're going to do everything we can to, prevent that by having people learn about what their rights are, and vote.
All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
And we'll be right back after the break. It's Be Lifted Up.